Well, good evening, Bayside Church. Good to see you tonight. I hope you've had a good week, and great to have you here this evening. You could be anywhere, but you are here. It's been a little cold this week, hasn't it? But at least we're not in Bali with the volcanoes kind of exploding in the background. Just a thought. Some of you got friends that are there right now. I know. So great to be together tonight. And whether you're a regular part of the Bayside Church family or whether you're visiting for the first time, a warm welcome. It's great to be able to share with you this evening. We're into part 2 of a 2-part series called How to Get Along with People. If you boil life down, it's really about loving God, connecting with Him in our lives, and loving people. Of course, loving people is easier said than done. Last week we looked at the fact that everyone's normal till you get to know them. And everyone is a little bit dysfunctional. Everyone kind of comes as is. We're not perfect. There's stuff we're working on in our lives, and we're the same. And so we've been looking at the life of Jesus. Jesus has some amazing teachings, some amazing miracles in the Gospels. But also, as we look at his relationships, we can learn a lot about getting along with the people in our world. And so we're doing kind of a master's degree, looking at a master's degree in relating. And we're looking at some skills that we can learn from Jesus. And so just a quick review. Who wasn't here last week? It's okay, it's not a test. We're not saying where were you, what you were doing. But if you missed last week, here's a quick summary. We looked at 4 particular skills last week. Number 1 is simply to accept people. In fact, we'll put this up on the screen. Thank you, media team. Here we go. So there we go. But we won't go on to tonight. I won't rush ahead. Number 1 was to accept people, just giving people the gift of acceptance, as Chloe reminded us tonight. Just treating people as they are, treating them with value and with honor. Jesus did that to everybody. The second skill we looked at was the skill of listening. Just the art of giving someone your attention. In a world of distraction and multitasking, giving someone the gift of attention is a wonderful gift. And so that's the second thing we learned from Jesus. He had a lot to say, but he was a great listener. Thirdly, we looked at the principle of empathy. Empathy goes beyond just listening to someone's words to going beneath the surface and hearing their heart, knowing their perspective, seeing life from where they stand. In fact, Simon reminded me that last Sunday morning I told a story I didn't tell Saturday night about empathy. It was a story actually about my dad. As a kid growing up, I had a pretty good family, happy family, but my dad would often miss significant events in my life. Like birthday would come up and Dad would go, "Oh, sorry, son, I'm preaching interstate." Or I'd have a basketball championship. "Oh, sorry, Dad, I've got this on." And so, not intentionally, but it was like many significant moments growing up in school, Dad was often away. And it was a bit of a sore spot. And we talked about it and he apologized, but it was always kind of there. And in my 40s, I was actually reading a book on manhood. And in this book, it talked about getting to know your father. And especially for us as men, unless we know who our father is or was, we'll never really understand ourselves because our dad is in us. And so understanding your dad's really, really important to know who you are. And the book is encouraging some conversations with our dad just to understand about their childhood. So I'm in my 40s now. I remember sitting down with my dad. My dad actually was an orphan. I knew that. He had no mum, had no dad, grew up in Salvation Army boys' home. And so I was just unpacking, Dad, what was it like to be an orphan, to not have a mum, to not have a dad? And we're just having a pretty open conversation. And he just had this random throwaway comment in the middle of this little chat. He says, you know, Mark, son, he called me. He said, I don't think I ever had a birthday party till I married your mother. I said, what? He said, I don't think I ever had a birthday party till I married your mother. And in that moment, everything changed for me. It didn't excuse him missing all those events, but you know what? I suddenly understood my dad a little bit more. He had no history of anyone ever throwing a party for him as a child growing up. He had no memory of that. And so it's like he didn't actually see the value in that I did. What am I saying? Empathy doesn't excuse, but it helps you to understand where someone's coming from. Everyone has a story if we'll just take the time to hear it. And then number 4, we talked about being authentic, being real, taking our masks off and in safe environments, telling people how we're doing really. And so there were 4 skills we learnt from Jesus last week. If you missed it, there's probably a podcast or a YouTube or something somewhere where you can go back and have a watch of that and catch up. So today we want to move forward and look at a few more relating skills as we seek to do life in our world today with your family, your work associates, your neighbors, your school mates, and of course here in church. So number 5, the 5th skill we learn from Jesus is learning to forgive. Everyone say forgive. You know, it's inevitable that conflict will happen in our life. You've heard me jokingly say in every connect group, in every church, in every family, in every neighborhood, there's someone we could call Mr. and Mrs. Sandpaper. You know, the person that just rubs you the wrong way. Come on, you know who they are. You can see their face right now. If they're sitting next to you, just look straight ahead. There's a Mr. or Mrs. Sandpaper in every one of our lives. And here's the deal. If you leave that connect group or you leave that church or you leave that job, let me just let you know, Mr. and Mrs. Sandpaper have cousins everywhere. Everywhere. Everywhere there's going to be someone that annoys you, that rubs you the wrong way. Jesus himself said it's inevitable that offenses will happen. So the issue is not, have you had a conflict, or if you haven't had a conflict, you haven't lived very long. The issue is not, will you have a conflict? It's how are you going to handle conflict when it takes place? Jesus modeled forgiveness. In fact, on the cross, there's people nailing to that cross, and he says, Father, forgive them. How unbelievable is that? They hadn't apologized, and he's already choosing a forgiving stance towards those who are hurting him. Father, forgive them. Jesus modeled forgiveness, and he also taught us to forgive. And when there's a conflict, Matthew 18, verse 15, if your brother or your sister sins or offends you, go. Everyone say go. Go and point out their fault, just between the two of you. If they listen to you, you have won them over. The word go, in the Greek language, the original meaning of the word go, if you look at the etymology, right at the root word, the word go actually means go. I know it's very deep. It's very deep for a Saturday night. Who is this guy you brought in, Chloe? It doesn't mean pray. It doesn't mean pass it on. It actually means go. This is the most disobeyed commandment of Jesus. And if we would just do this, what a difference it would make. When you're offended, when conflict happens, don't pass it on. Don't just pray about it. It's okay to pray. Go and sort it out. See, anger gets us in trouble, but pride keeps us there. Anger gets us in trouble, but it's pride that keeps us there because we don't want to go in humility, apologize, forgive, and do our best to sort it out. Paul picks this up in Ephesians 4, 26 to 32. In your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you're still angry. Last time I checked, the sun was going down about every 24 hours. In other words, work it out quickly, lest you give the devil a foothold. This is an amazing statement. If you don't deal with your anger, you actually give an access point to the enemy's work in your life. Do your best to sort out conflict as quickly as possible. He goes on to say, get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, brawling, slander, all kinds of malice, and be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as in Christ God forgave you. And so learning to forgive is a difficult part of relationships. And it's so vital. They say in marriage, the key to a successful marriage is not a marriage that never has conflict. The key is the ability to reconnect emotionally after a conflict. So strong marriages are not conflict-free. Strong marriages have the ability after a conflict to forgive and to reconnect emotionally. If you can do that, you've got a great future in that relationship. If you're not able to reconnect and there's distance and then more distance and more distance, then that relationship is in a lot of trouble. The key in conflict is for us to, I think, first of all, look at ourselves. I'll give you an example. In most conflicts or arguments, how many know the other person's 90% wrong usually, and we're about 10% wrong? That's the usual ratio, you know. And so what we do when there's been a conflict, it's so easy to, well, they said and you said, it's so easy to look at their 90% and just to keep retelling it. You wouldn't go back to a bad movie, do you? But we like to kind of replay it in our mind with surround sound in high definition, and we rewind it and replay it and relive it over and over. We focus on their 90%. You know, I've learned if you could just look at your 10% and just take responsibility for your 10%, it's amazing what it'll do in the relationship. Not always, but many times. I'll tell you a funny story. When I was a young pastor, we trained prayer teams for ministry time at church. And we did a great job. We trained all these teams. And there was this one meeting where we had some worship time and we had some prayer ministry. And so we said, would our prayer teams come forward? And so the prayer teams came forward. And it was good ministry. The Holy Spirit was at work. There was this guy in our church, and I won't mention his name, but he was a real maverick. You don't have any in Bayside, but he was the law unto himself. He didn't come to our training, but he was kind of God's man of faith and power, you know. And so he came down and started praying with people. Well, he's out of order because he's not on the prayer team. I'm a young pastor, so I went down and I gave him a piece of my mind. Right there, hallelujah, Jesus. And so I confronted him. I said, look, this is, you know, you're not on the prayer team. You didn't come to the training. We have this kind of little intense fellowship moment right there in the meeting. And so he went back to his seat and we kept praising God and worshiping and off we went. Anyway, I went home, had lunch and told Nicole about, so you know what they did, told the story, you know. And then I just had this little check in my spirit. And I thought, you know what? Probably could have handled that better. And so I got on the phone and I called him up. I said, hey, so-and-so, it's Mark here. Long silence. And I said, I just want to apologize. You know, what I did today, I didn't do in the right manner. I shouldn't have spoken like I spoke, and I shouldn't have confronted you in that environment in front of other people. Would you forgive me? Now, I could have said, hey, don't you know I'm the pastor? I was right. How many know I was right? You know I was right. I know I was right. I could have gone to my 90%, and how many know we just would have had another argument on the phone? But I looked at my 10% and I said, you know what? I didn't handle that as well as I could. And I took responsibility for my 10%. And I said, I'm sorry, I reacted, I spoke louder than I should have, and I shouldn't have confronted you in front of other people. And then I said, would you forgive me? And there was a bit of a gap, and he said, of course, and then he ended up apologizing. And you could feel the peace come into the relationship. And so I mentioned that just to say, these are powerful words. I was wrong. How about we practice that? Just with a little bit more sincerity. I was wrong. Those words, if you are, I'm not talking about taking responsibility for what's not your responsibility. I was wrong. How about these ones? Would you forgive me? These are powerful words. If we can just learn to take care of our part of the situation. See, when you apologize, when you take care of your 10%, it's like untying someone's knots. You know, you get a rope that's knotted. That's what a conflict is like. And when you apologize, when you have a soft answer, it's just like untying the knot. It doesn't guarantee their response, but you're taking responsibility for your part of the situation. See, we have to value being reconciled over being right. We've got to value the relationship over the issue. Now, the issue is important. Who's right is important. But how many of my two boys are fighting? Whose side am I on? Whose side am I on if my two boys are fighting? I'm not on either side. My heart as a father is, stop fighting your brothers. Now, who hit who? Who took what? The issues are secondary. They're important, but my heart is, stop fighting. And I think when God looks at us as a human family, what's he saying? Stop fighting. Value the relationship. Okay, now let's talk about what happened. Now, we all have different conflict managing styles. I heard someone talk about different animals. Some of us are a teddy bear when it comes to conflict. What are teddy bears? Teddy bears just don't want any issues. And so teddy bears give up on the issue just to value the relationship. They say, I was wrong with everything. I'm sorry, don't worry, it doesn't matter. Teddy bears are just cuddly and just warm, and they just want to keep the peace. Some of you are teddy bears. Other people are turtles when it comes to conflict. You know what turtles do when there's a conflict? They just withdraw. They pull their head in. They give up on the issue and the relationship. Let me know when it's all done. Okay, some of you are turtles when it comes to conflict. And then there's the shark. The shark is the person who thrives on a good argument. And there's an issue, and sharks don't always have a lot of friends, but they get their way a lot. And some of us are kind of shark-like. And then there's the owl. The owl is the wise person who kind of balances the relationship and the issue. Doesn't give up on the relationship, but doesn't give up on the issue, and tries to navigate both together. All right, confession time. Who's a teddy bear? One teddy bear in the room. You liars. Lots of teddy bears here. Who's the turtle? Okay, their head's under the chair right now. Yeah. Okay, where's all the sharks in the room? Come on. Yeah, just sit a little way away from these people. Where's all the owls? Come on, all the wise. Yes, the wise. There's always owls in the midst. Now here's a little insight for you. It's good to think about your animal and your family's animals, but here's a little thought. A certain animal pushed into a corner can morph into a different animal. You push a teddy bear into a corner and they can morph into a shark. Ever seen a very quiet, demure people suddenly go on the attack? You pushed them too far. Or a shark can actually morph into a turtle if they don't get their own way. Come on, you know some of those people. They just kind of withdraw because they didn't actually get what they wanted. So what's the best animal? There's another animal called the fox. The fox is a very sly animal. And the fox learns that it's not wise to be one thing all the time. The fox is a situational conflict manager. Sometimes it just pays to be a teddy bear. Doesn't really matter. Yeah, no worries, whatever you want. It's good. Love you. Sometimes it pays to be a teddy bear. Sometimes it's smart to be a turtle. Just pull your head in, let it all finish, and then come up and say, hey, everyone. Sometimes you need to be a little bit shark-like. Sometimes we need to be assertive. Unfortunately, us Christians confuse assertiveness with aggressiveness. It's okay to be assertive. Come on, as we see Jesus turn the other cheek. You ever seen Paul when he's been slapped? He goes, did you know I'm a Roman citizen? He's being assertive. Some issues, you need to be a little shark-like and get over this culture of superficial niceness. Bless Jesus, hallelujah. We need to be a little shark-like. And sometimes it pays to be the owl. Depends on the situation. And so what's your conflict management style? Whatever it is, we all need to learn to forgive. Now, forgiving doesn't mean excusing, it doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't necessarily mean reconciling. I'm going to say that again. Forgiving someone doesn't mean they're excused. It doesn't mean that you're forgive and forget. You don't just wipe your memories. And forgiving doesn't necessarily mean reconciling. You may have been abused by someone. It's one thing to forgive them. It's another thing to reconcile and be in relationship with them. That may never happen. You may have a business partner that's been dishonest. You may forgive them. It doesn't mean you're going to be in partnership again. Are you following with me? Forgiving is giving up your right for revenge. It's giving up your desire to get back at them. To forgive literally means to let go of the offense, but it doesn't guarantee that the relationship is necessarily going to be what it once was. It's giving up your right to hurt them or to get even. And so I want to encourage you. This is a hard thing to do, to forgive. It really is hard. You'll never feel like forgiving. But the amazing thing about forgiveness is forgiveness actually frees you. It frees you. Because when you're full of bitterness and resentment and vengeance, then you're actually in prison. You're the one suffering. But when you forgive, when you tear up those IOUs, when you give up your right to get back, see, an eye for an eye ends up with everyone in the world being blind. You've heard that before. Some point, someone has to stop and say, I refuse to get even, to get back. When you forgive, you actually set yourself free. Let me say in this area is sometimes in a conflict, we try to sort it out and it doesn't get sorted out and we get stuck. Jesus is so serious about this. He says, if you have an issue, go and sort it out. If it doesn't get sorted out, take another person. And then get some others involved. In other words, make every effort on your part to sort it out. And I would just say, look, whether it's a marriage here today or parent, teenager, if you're in a conflict and we just can't sort it out, then it's okay to ask for help. A funny story. A few years ago, Nicole and I, on our day off, we're driving out in the Dandenongs, and we're on this dirt road, and we're driving along, and there was a couple of kangaroos and some emus there, which you don't always see. And Nicole says, oh, let's have a look. So I reversed back to see the emus, and I didn't realize there was a big ditch at the side of the road, and so I ended up just on the edge of this ditch. And Nicole got out, and she was directing me. I went forward, and we went down further. And then I went backward, and we went down further, and we were stuck. You know, we got about a meter there, and forward or backward, it was getting worse. And so who are you going to call? Not Ghostbusters. Chloe, you got to talk to the elders here. I mean, bored, need a little bit of help. I called the RECV. I said, hey, we're stuck, you know. Embarrassing moment for a guy, you know. We're sitting there half an hour, you know, Nicole and I. Emus have gone now. And we're having a bit of intense fellowship. And eventually, be more careful. Anyway. And the RECV guy comes and says, hi, yeah, we're kind of stuck here. And you know, it's a bit embarrassing, you know. But he hooks us up and four-wheel drive and boom, we're out of there. You know, when you're stuck, it's a bit embarrassing. But, you know, if I hadn't made the call, I'd still be there today, hanging on the ditch. It's okay if you get stuck. Some situations, relation, you just go, this is not working, it's not getting sorted out. You know, call a counselor, call the pastor, get a mature person and say, hey, can you help us with this, if at all possible? Everyone doing okay tonight? So Jesus teaches us the art of forgiveness. Wow. Doesn't get easier, but forgiveness frees you. It's a powerful gift to people to forgive. Number 6 is to confront lovingly. Whoa. You know, so if you just heard my message tonight, you can say, oh, Jesus is this nice, lovely, wonderful, love everybody, accept everybody, be empathetic, have feelings. But Jesus didn't mince words. You notice that? I mean, yeah, he rebuked the disciples at times. You know, Jesus knew what it was to confront. And he called out disciples. He called out religious leaders. He called out the crowd. And learning to do this in a loving manner. This is not loving confrontation. It's confronting lovingly. If you love confrontation, that's probably another problem. Confronting lovingly. Paul puts it this way in Ephesians 4:15. I think, again, reflecting on Jesus. Instead, speaking the truth in love, we're going to grow up. We're going to mature. Everyone say, speaking the truth in love. Isn't that a powerful statement? I've learned in church, some people are so loving, they never speak the truth. It's just this niceness. It's this kind of passive-aggressive. Bless you, brother. Love you. But they don't really love you. They're annoyed with you. but they're not going to tell you they're annoyed with you. Sometimes we're so loving, we never speak the truth. On the other hand, some people are very truthful, but they're not very loving. And to balance the courage and the consideration, to speak the truth, but to do so in a loving manner. See, the truth is we all have blind spots. Every one of us have blind spots. We all have weaknesses. We all have things in our life we do not see. And we need other people to help us see them and make them grow. And see, my theory in life is I have weaknesses and you see them. And so the sooner I hear about them, the quicker I can work on them. If my zipper is down tonight, tell me. Don't just laugh at me, tell me. It's okay, I checked already. But how many know if when you tell me my zipper's down, I punch you, you'll think twice before you ever tell me my zipper's down again? We teach people how to treat us. And if we're not good at responding to feedback, if we're not good at listening to other people's perspective, if we're defensive or if we're reactionary, we actually stop, we shut down the feedback. And yet we desperately need it. I'll tell you a funny story. When I was a young leader in my early 20s, my job at church when I was at City Life was to look after the guest speakers. So I would often drive to the airport and pick speakers up and then return them on Monday. So I don't know if you might have heard this story. And so we had a pastor from Africa. His name was Elijah Maswanganji. And he came in, he did a men's event, and he preached on the weekend, and our church loved him. Anyway, Monday morning, I'm driving him way out to the airport, hour drive from eastern suburbs. And on the way to the airport, Elijah Maswanganji, he's encouraging me. He goes, Mark, you're a good young leader. You got great potential, and God's going to use you. And I'm driving, I'm enjoying this drive. And then he goes, there's a couple of things you need to work on. Number one, you need to smile more. You're actually really tall, and being tall, you're quite intimidating. And so you need to learn to smile, because a smile warms people. Then he shared a few other things we don't have time to talk about tonight. Look at you. Anyway, I dropped him at the airport fairly quickly. And then I started the long drive home. And can I be honest? I was annoyed. Smile, gee. I'm smiling on the inside. I was annoyed. And yet as the days went on, I realized he was right. And so I just started smiling. Drive down the road. Get into an elevator, into the lift. I just started smiling everywhere. In fact, a few years later, I was in Adelaide preaching at Danny Guglamucci's church, and a lady came up and said, "You're the smiling preacher." And I said, "Elijah, where are you now?" It's a funny story, but you know what? I'm thankful for someone who was willing to speak the truth in love into my life. See, the encouragement's great, but I needed someone to adjust me. I needed someone to be a mirror to me, to make me a better person, to make me a better leader. And wow, wouldn't it be great to be a community where we can do that in love and we don't have super sensitive skin, where we can't cope with it, but we actually learn to help one another grow. Loving assertiveness, not aggressiveness, but learning to speak the truth in love to one another. Jesus modeled this, and I think our great community is a place where we can give one another feedback, but we know we're for each other. The art of confronting lovingly. Let's look at one more. There's many we could cover. Jesus, I think, is an amazing example of relationships, but let's look at one more, and this is the area of encouragement. God is a phenomenally encouraging God. Jesus is at his baptism. He hasn't preached a sermon, hasn't healed anybody, hasn't cast out a demon. And the Father bursts out of heaven and said, "This is my Son. I'm so pleased with him." Doesn't that just tell you something about God? Is he doesn't kick you when you're down. Even when you haven't done anything, he says, "You're amazing. God is an incredible God, and He expresses His love for us through words. You know, our words are very powerful. Proverbs 18:21 says, "Death and life are in the power of your tongue." And so we can use our words to destroy, to tear down, to damage someone. Or we can use our words to build them up, to encourage them. Let me talk to you authority figures in the room, whether you're a parent, a teacher, or a pastor, or a CEO, or a manager. As authority figures, your words carry even greater power than someone else. If some random person on the street says to a teenager, "You're an idiot," it doesn't mean very much. But if their parent says, "You're an idiot," or if the pastor, God forbid, says, "You're an idiot," how many know when you carry authority, those words carry much greater power? That's why Paul said, "I will use my authority not for tearing you down, but for building you up." If you carry a position of authority, let your words be words of life, words that build people up. We become what other people believe we can become, especially influential people in our life. Parents, I want to encourage you, is the quickest way to get mum or dad's attention to do something wrong? Often it is in many families. You want to get mum or dad's attention? Just do something wrong. No, we need to catch our kids doing something right. We need to affirm what they're good at. Here's the question, mums and dads. When kids bring home the report card and there's 2 A's, a D, and an F, what do you talk about first? What do you talk about first? Why not go to the A and say, "Wow, you must love that subject. Tell me about it." We often go for the lowest, for the negative. Let me just say this. Not every kid is academic. Not every kid is musical. Not every kid is athletic. Your kid's not going to be good at everything. And as a parent, we don't want to project our lives on their life. We want to discover what they're passionate about, what they're good about. I'm thankful for parents that discovered what I was energized about. My mum played the piano, my dad played the piano, my sister played the piano. They said, "Do piano lessons." I said, "I don't want to play the piano." They never forced me to play the piano. They never forced me to take lessons. I wasn't interested. When I was 13, I heard someone named Mike play the piano. I said, "I want to play the piano. I want to be like Mike." And you know what? Within a year or two, I was playing in youth group because now I wanted to play. Why not encourage their own drives, their own bents, rather than project on them what you want them to be? I heard of a parent that checked in their kid into kindergarten and said they're going to be a politician when they grow up. Serious. Like they've already decided what they want to be. Now, don't get me wrong, parents. I'm not saying, it's okay for your teenager to say, "Mom and Dad, I just don't feel gifted to take out the rubbish." It's not my calling. No, I'm not talking about that. But when it comes to careers and passions, catch them doing what they're good at, what energizes them. Not every kid's wired the same way. They have unique strength. And your job as a parent is not to put your imprint on them, but to discover their God-given imprint and see that emerge. What a difference when we encourage what's there rather than always look at what's not there. The truth is we all thrive under encouragement. I mean, come on, if you work for a boss, how many love to work for a boss who only talks to you when you've done something wrong? I mean, how bad is that? Someone once called that a seagull manager. You don't see them, then they flap in, dump on you, and then flap out. It's a bit crude, but... Come on, we've all been under a seagull manager. You never see them. I mean, how unpleasant is that? No one wants to work for somebody that only speaks to you when you've done something wrong. We all thrive when people catch us doing something right. Say thanks for that. Hey, you did a great job. Didn't Chloe host amazingly today? She did a great job. I told her when she sat down, she's the hostess with the mostess. See people and affirm them. God's an affirming God. It's so very, very important. And don't just see people the way they are. See what they can become. Jesus saw Simon, and names have meaning. Simon means reed, shaky, fickle, flaky. Simon, you're Simon. You're an up and down emotional roller coaster. You're Simon, but you're going to become Peter. You're going to become a rock. You're going to be someone solid I can build on. What's he doing? He's speaking to Peter's future. Remember Gideon? Gideon? Angel says, hey, Gideon, you mighty warrior. Was that Gideon? No, he was hiding. See, God sees people the way they are and the way they can become. We tend to see them the way they are and the way they used to be. Oh, there's John. There's Mary. We've got to learn to see what people can become. I was an 18-year-old and a Bible college lecturer took me out to lunch, and somewhere during the lunch he says, Mark, you're a really good young man. It's clear God's given you a leadership gift. And he just started affirming me. I remember leaving that lunch feeling about a foot taller than I already am. See, other people had thought that, but no one had ever said that. Did you ever go to a funeral and listen to all the eulogies and sit there and go, I wonder if that person knew that when they were alive? Don't wait till someone's dead to go, they were amazing. It's too late then. Why not tell them now? Why not write a card? Why not write a letter? Why not go see someone after the meeting and say, I just want to thank you. I loved Olga just talking to Chloe before the meeting. And Olga's raving about Chloe and the impact Chloe's had in your life. And then you started raving about Olga, and it's just this mutual admiration society. I just had to leave afterwards. But actually, it was a beautiful moment because they were competing in encouraging each other. No, you. It was a wonderful moment. You know, there's a guy in the Bible called Joseph, and they changed his name to Barnabas. You know why? Because everywhere he went, he left a trail of encouraged people. May his tribe increase. Barnabas means son of encouragement. May we be people who build one another up. You need a Bible verse, you're waiting for it. That's not the one, actually. Oh, I put the wrong one up there. That's a good Bible verse, but that's not the one I want. And that's my mistake because I put these together. Hebrews 10, 24 to 25. Let us consider how we may spur one another on towards good deeds and love, not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another. Encourage, to put courage in, encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. Be an encourager. Jesus shows up in the book of Acts, you know. I don't know if you've actually noticed that, but if you read the book of Acts, there are 3 times where Jesus shows up in Paul's life. I think most of them he's in prison. One he's on a ship that's about to go into a shipwreck. And Peter either has a vision or an angel or Jesus speaks to him, and they're all words of encouragement. Paul, I've got many people in the city. Be strong. Jesus is always building us up, encouraging us, and he wants us to do the same. Can I just do a little PS here? I want to really encourage you to encourage your leaders, whether that be your boss at work on Monday or teenagers, your parents, or your Connect leader, or your pastors here at Bayside. I have a good friend named Keith Farmer. He's 70 plus now. And over the last few years, he's mentored well over 100 pastors right across Australia of some very large churches. And in his mentoring time with them, he, near the end, just asked a question. He says, if the enemy could get at you right now, where are you most vulnerable? And he says, Mark, you know what 9 out of 10 people say? These are pastors, leaders, well-known people. He says 9 out of 10 say discouragement. It's quite amazing. You'd think it'd be something big, some other big temptation. They say where I'm most vulnerable is discouragement. And so, you know, if you've got a leader in your life, don't let the only time they hear from you be when you're complaining about something. There's not enough of this, or there's too much of this, or I don't like this. Leaders need encouragement too. And so I want to encourage you to encourage the people in your world. And some of the people you think, oh, they don't need encouragement, you'd be surprised how much just a little note that says, hey, I just want to thank you for. And I want you to know I noticed, and I want you to know I appreciate you. unbelievable difference that can make on your boss. Again, doesn't mean they're perfect. Remember, they come as is. But just to appreciate and to encourage what a difference that can make. And so as we wrap up our series, two-part series, How to Get Along with People, Jesus is the master relator. We've learned to accept, to listen, to show empathy, to be authentic, to forgive those who will offend us, to confront lovingly, and to encourage. And so as I said last week, I wonder which relationship in your world right now needs most attention. Relationships are like a bank account. And if you made lots of deposits, you can have a conflict and a withdrawal and it's all going to be okay. But if there hasn't been many deposits and you have a conflict, things are going to bounce. So which relationship in your life needs the most attention right now? And what could you do? It takes two people to make a great relationship, but one person can influence a relationship. Let's pray together.